Oh, thanks. I don't wear my shoes, if that's okay. I didn't even wear them on my wedding day. I don't like them. I feel closer to where I am if I have them off. Makes sense, right? Amanda's just one of my best friends in the world, and she just carries so much, as you can already see, and I really just want her to play the whole time. I'm not trying to be dramatic. I just think it changes things. It really moves things around. It sets the tone. It changes things that you can't change with words, and it does it quicker, you know? So you just play whatever you hear. She has this thing in her heart to make just an instrumental album too. Just this really powerful. Yeah, she's going to do it. It's incredible, the things she wrote. I just want to, I feel like I wanted to share some really practical things with you. My brothers heard me talk. I talked their ears off about this stuff. So some of these things are just really burning in me right now, and I felt like they worked. I felt like we're all prophetic. And some, maybe some carry a mantle. Maybe some are really prophetic. I'm not exalting one above the other. It's just there's a lot of prophetic people in the room. We're all hungry to hear from God, right? And sometimes as prophetic people, it's really, really easy to get. How many of you have heard from God? You have this word. The Lord promised you something. He's revealed himself to you, and it seems like it's out here. It's like you're living to see this thing happen. And the problem with prophetic people, well, it's their strength, but it's also a problem, is that we can look so far ahead that we miss everything that's right here. We're so ready to get to the promised land, and we want to be here all the time, that we miss the promise in the land that we're already in. Because God is in the process. And this is the really practical thing I want to talk to you about as prophetic people. I had a dream. My husband and I both had dreams and I'll get to the other dreams that I had before the conference. I would rather just wrap up with that, and then we can pray for families and do that, whatever. But several months ago, my husband and I we had horrible sleep. I had all kinds of, the enemy was coming to me in the night telling me I was going to die and lying and all these things all night long. It was all night long. You guys, some of you know what I'm talking about. And it was just like this onslaught, and also the Lord was just letting some things happen because it was a shift in season. He was allowing some things to be tested, which I processed with this, Stacy, thank God. And one night, my husband, who was amazing, I wish he was here, he said, he prayed over us before we went to bed. We were just so tired because we weren't sleeping. And when we did sleep, we were having horrible dreams. We were so frustrated. And we're this isn't stuff we're letting in. It's just really frustrating that it's happening. And so we're praying, and the last thing I remember my husband praying, I was so tired I hardly heard any of it, but the last thing, he took my hand, and we're just laying in bed, and he said, "And God, we thank you for clarity. Thanks for clarity." And we went to sleep, and I go into this dream with Chris Valentin, who's precious prophet Papa at Bethel. And in this dream, we go for a long walk, and we talked about a lot of personal things. But at the end of it, he was getting ready to leave me. And he turned and walked away and then stopped. And he turned back, and he took my hand, and he said, "Don't look ahead too far, or you'll be there." And in that, you know how sometimes in your dreams, you'll hear something, but there's layers to it, and you just know all of them? Do you know what I'm saying? You know things that aren't being said in your dreams. And in that moment, I knew that he was saying to me, once a prophet sees, he can't unsee. Once a prophet hears, they can't unhear. Once a prophet understands, they can't, it's there. It's engraved. This is what you've heard from the Lord, and now you know, and you can't forget it. Now the Lord's shown me this thing, and I can't live my life like I haven't seen it. Right? This is the tension we live in as prophetic people, that God shows you something, and there's this vision, and we do live for the future, but we live from the moment so we can sow into that place, knowing that every step, every specific thing we do, every yes to God is what gets us there. It's all the process. It's all a part of it. That the success and the outcome is not what's successful. God doesn't measure success by the outcome. He measures it in steps, in the yes. The things you say yes to in the dark. And then later he turns on the light and you find out what you said yes to. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. He's looking for your yes. One way or another, whatever it is, whatever he's asking you to do, he wants your yes. And if he knows he has your heart, there we go. So I felt like it's just really in my heart to walk people through the process of life. It's really easy as prophetic people, and this has been a real hard thing for me. Like the Lord, in that dream, I knew the Lord, I knew it was a gentle rebuke. Because my whole life, if I felt like God said something and I believed it with all my heart, it was forget everything else and go after it. I mean, forget everything, everybody. If the Lord said it, I'm on my way. Don't even try to talk to me while I'm on my way. And then I just keep learning better ways. There's a better way. You can take people with you. Guys, you can take them with you. It's so much better. What? I'm like running with my sword, chopping off heads on the way up the mountain. What? You know what I'm talking about. Oh, prophetic people. So I finally just realized, like, so I don't have to fight everything. I get it. I can lay down my sword, and the Prince of Peace, the person of peace, will go to war for me. And as I walk through this process, you're in the whole thing. And so I've been on this journey. My theology is constantly changing. The more I know him, the more I'm like, I don't think I believe that anymore. Foundational stays the same. But I felt like God said to me, like, sometimes you're like, I'm just undone before you, God. I'm undone. And he said, no, you're not. You're not. You're really not. You don't know what that looks like. And I mean, I've been a mess. Like, I can think, and I'm kind of looking at the Lord like, what do you mean I don't know what that means? Because I'm like, I feel completely shredded. Like I've had encounters with God, where he comes so close that you feel like your skin is the only thing keeping you together. Like I'm going to explode. But he said, you don't know what undone looks like. He said, all of life is the undoing until one day, face to face, you're completely undone. Now we see in part, then we'll fully know. Now we see in part. Now I don't care how powerful you are as a prophet. Now you see in part. Always. Don't ever think you see the whole thing. So in this process, maybe I'm supposed to share this one thing. I had this encounter with the Lord several years back before I went to Reading. And I was in my room, and I was just asking God to be close. I'm just like, I'm so hungry for you. I grew up Nazarene, by the way. Laugh about it. That's funny. But it was so, Jesus was a Nazarene, okay? That's where we got it. Let's talk about it. Not ashamed. Not ashamed. Thankful for my background. I'm thankful that I grew up and knew how to fight for something. I'm very thankful about that. But I had, we had revival break out in our little Nazarene church. Break out. And Randy Clark and all these other people, they just showed up because there's stuff happened in this little church. And there's, literally a light that was above the building. And people would pull in off the streets, and they'd cram in. There was no room. We had a really little building. And it was just exploding. All these different things, miracles and all kinds of stuff. And in that season, it was just a season of lots of encounters, and we'd stay up all night. And then you'd sleep for a couple hours, and then I'd wake up, and I'd just lay there, really hungry. I don't know how I got away with not working in that season, but I didn't. And I just laid there in the presence, and then we'd go back, and then I'd lead worship again, and we'd be there till 4 a.m. Every day for weeks. And there was one day, I said to the Lord, I need you to burn me beautiful. I know this is a scary thing to say, but I want to be close. This is about closeness. I have to be closer to you. All of this is nothing. I don't want to get another word for somebody else or another. I'm not trying to live for something far away. I need you now. I want you now. I want to be close. Closer than my skin. I want you to come and feel. I want to share every breath with you. It's that place where, like if you stare somebody long enough, I was saying this to sister last night. It's that face-to-face place. Like if you stare at someone long enough right in the eyes, you'll start breathing the same way. You'll start taking the same breaths. It's kind of freaky. But I wanted that with the Lord so badly. And I asked him to come and burn in me, that he would come. I said brand. Oh boy. I used the word brand. Be careful what words you use when you pray for the Lord to come, because he hears them, just like we were talking about last night. And I said, I want you to come and brand me. Come and brand me. Like burn it into me. And next thing I know, I see far in a distance, I see like this ball. It looked like a fire, this ball of fire, and it's like flying. It's getting closer, and I realize it's bigger than I thought it was, and it came closer and closer, and it's like this. Then I realized it was a body with a fist, and the fist was fire, and his eyes were fire. It's like it's the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. Really, to this day. It was terrifying. But I knew it was God. And he came with it's like his fist, and like flying toward me, and it was this angel of fire that he sent when I asked him to brand me. And I closed my eyes because it scared me so much. And I felt like his fist went into my chest, into my heart. It's like I felt my rib cage move, went into my heart, and I felt a burning fill my heart. And then it went out through my whole body, and I cried because it hurt. And he said, you asked for it. Yes. I was losing it last night when you said that, because that's the encounter that I thought of. He said, you asked for it. And I said, I did. And because I grabbed my heart at first, but when he said, you asked for it, I let go. And I opened my hands. And there's a price for the closeness. There's a cost in closeness. In the burning, in the face-to-face place. I don't know why I felt like I was supposed to share that, but I did. I just want to say to you that if there are moments when if you have trouble with this looking out, if you have trouble with this, I don't know how to be right here in this moment, and I don't know how to just let go. Sometimes we get we get so caught up in the word that we forget the one who sent it. And we get on this mission to go get this thing done, and we forget about being close to the one who gave us the message in the first place. It's so easy to be on a mission when the best thing you could ever do to get that done is to be in his face, to stay close. How many of you feel like how many of you feel like when you hear from God and you try to sit down and just be, that all these thoughts fill your head, and it's like task oriented, and you feel like even though you have this intimate walk with God, that there's all these things that fill your mind. Like you try to sit down and worship, you try to sit down and be close, but there's there's always stuff in the way. All this crap. Because that's what it is. But sometimes we get to where we're almost discouraged, and it keeps us from the presence. And we're like, I can't do this. I have all this stuff in my head, and I just want to be close to you. But God's not afraid of your stuff. This is what I want to get to. God's not afraid of your stuff. He's not afraid of all the thoughts that are coming. He's not afraid of all the life stuff that's going on. Like, he's not intimidated by that. He didn't fall off of his throne because you had some crazy thoughts. He didn't fall off his throne. Not even for a second did he question his own authority. He's pretty confident. He's been doing this a long time. God. And I've had these moments, even in this last year, he sent me through this process. He's like, all of life is the undoing. So you think that you come to a point where you're undone, you have got a serious trip coming. Because all of life is the undoing. We're in layers. We're these complex beings that he created this way on purpose. And so there are layers of things that you're going to walk through. There are layers. Sometimes we feel like I am dealing with the same problem that I was dealing with years ago. Probably maybe that's true for some. But a lot of us are just hitting another layer of a thing that's gone for years. And I'm not discounting that God in a moment can speak to things and remove things that have been for a lifetime. I'm not saying that, but sometimes God lets us go through a process so that we can build a man or a woman that couldn't be built any other way. He's asking us to get good at process. He's asking us to get good at saying, I blew it, and I just need to be close to you. Good grief. David, in all of his process, he's one of the most beautiful things. How many of you you hear David and you're like, oh, I want to be like David. A man after God's own heart. I want to be close. Like, he knew how to be close to God. He had this intimate thing with God. Why? Because he got messy. We're so afraid to get messy. It's like I heard the word and I'm going to release this word and I hear from God and I'm close to him. Oh, my stars. His stars. I don't know why I said that. It just... You're still messy. You're still human. And you're allowed to be. Sometimes we forget that it's like we feel like we have to be something specific to do this thing that God's called us to do. And we feel like all this time is us getting ready so we can do this and be good enough to do this. He didn't ask you when you were good enough. And he sure didn't save you when you were good enough. And it never scared him. He's not afraid of your stuff. So you have the things to work on. Be willing to work on them. Be willing to call them what they are. Be willing to ask for help. You don't have to be right all the time. You just need to be close. Prophetic people love to be right. They love nailing those words. Man, you know what I'm talking about. They love to be right. And you prophesy over somebody and they start to cry. You're like, yes. Yes. And you try to hide it, but you're like so stoked because you're like, nailed it. Nailed it. You know it's true. And then you want to tell everybody what happened. You're like, oh, just God bless, Jesus just blessed me. Just listen to what he just did. And I'm not saying that's bad. I love testimonies. You know what I'm talking about, coming from a different heart. But it's funny, like, we feel like we have to be so done up. Like, we need people to think, well, if she's going to hear from God, then man, what her life must be like when no one's watching. I bet she spends all day long in the presence. Yes, but it may not look like what you're thinking. It's that learning to commune in the middle of the process. It's that learning to say yes no matter where you are. Like, if it's dark, yes. If I'm in the bed earlier, I thought you said my life but with the Lord in the bathroom. You said, yeah, I remember. I thought you said bathroom, but it was secret place, bedroom. I get it. I don't know. I don't know. But it was funny. I'm like, it's funny. I have a portal in my bathroom. I always go in my bathroom and sit on the floor and I shut the door. Yes, all the time. I just sit on it and I go, speak, your servant is listening. Sometimes it's in the middle of the night. I just go, sit. But the point is, like, he wants your yes. He asked for you. He was fully aware of everything else that needed to change. It's not like he didn't know who he was asking to do this job. And I feel like people, if we want to minister to the body or to people who are lost, nobody wants a word from you if you can't be real with them. No matter how accurate the word is, no one wants to hear from you if you're perfect. That does nothing for me. You can't help my life. You don't know about problems. You don't know about issues because you're perfect. People don't want to hear from that. They want a Jesus they can touch. They want to know they can reach out and touch him. That he's not far away, that he's only close to people who have it all together. And we got to quit lying to ourselves and to other people and be okay that we're not okay sometimes. It's okay to not be okay sometimes. This is the undoing. This is the undoing. That God touches on something and says, that's enough of that. It's enough of that. And we need to be okay with saying, it's enough of that. Like to look at people and go, I don't know the answer to your question. Instead of trying to come up with something ridiculous that sounds super spiritual. It's okay to not know the answer to everything. It's okay to just say, you know what? I don't know, but I'm gonna pray with you. I'm going to ask God about that thing. I'm going to seek God's face on your behalf, and I'm going to ask too. People will fall in love with Jesus. It's the kindness of God. It's the kindness of God that leads men to repentance. Not the rightness, not the perfection. He could have said anything, but he said kindness. And I just feel like in this, if we're going to be a people who change the world, if we're going to be prophetic people who actually walk in this thing to be close to God and to change the world, like we really want to change people's lives, we really want to draw them into an encounter with God. If that's really what we want, that we'll be okay with getting messy and saying, I don't know. I don't know. I need help. I'm a mess. And it still be okay. Doesn't mean you stay in your mess. It means you keep moving, but you walk through the process. I can't tell you how many times I sat down to worship just alone with the Lord. And I'm sitting there, I'm at the keys, and I'm worshiping, I'm praying. I'm trying to, I'm that face-to-face, right? Like, I want to see you. And I've got all this stuff going on. And I feel bad. It's like you just feel bad, like, again, there's stuff in the way. And he's like, well, go ahead. Take care of that. And he'd say to me, sing it out. Sing it out. And it's like I had this thing in my head, like I had to come a certain way. Or it's like to put the Lord first, I had to try to push all this stuff away and but he knew that he already had my heart. He knew he had my yes. He knew that I had come to be with him. And this stuff showed up as I came to be with him. He knew that my choice was to be there. And so he's like, I'm not concerned about it. Sing it out. It's better out than in. It gets nasty in there. Part of our problem is we don't want to talk about stuff because we don't want people to know that there's messy stuff in there. Good grief, it's making you sick. And you're not fun. You're no fun. And I just confrontation doesn't have to equal conflict. It doesn't. It's okay to need help. Like, good grief. Can we talk about, I'm going to give you a good example of process, and then we'll move on, because this is just really hilarious, and I know we've all read it. I don't want you to turn, well, when I find it, I'll say, you don't have to turn there, I'm just going to read it to you. David, who is the man after God's own heart, it's okay to get out your soul stuff first. Sometimes we feel like we push through and we push and push and push and push. And we're like, we try to sing I Will Exalt Thee 1,000,000 times until you feel like finally you are exalting him above everything. And we've taken so long when you could have spent 5 minutes singing out your soul song and getting the junk out and be completely focused. He's not concerned about the order because he already had your yes first. Sometimes it just doesn't happen that way. Sometimes you need to vomit before you can swallow. That's gross. I'm so sorry. I didn't even think of it. You know what I'm talking about, though. That's disgusting. I'm so sorry. You don't even know me, and I'm talking about this. But do you know what I mean? Right? Okay. So David, Psalm 88. The guy is a wreck. I mean, he's an absolute wreck. I mean, he knows God so well, right? He knows him intimately. He spent all this time on the hillside with just he and God. He knows God. He knows better than to say the things he's saying, but he needed to get them out. And God wasn't afraid of that. He still called him a man after God's own heart. He didn't say that about anybody else, as far as I know. May my prayer come before you. Turn your ear to my cry. For my soul is full of trouble, and my life draws near to the grave. Dramatic. I am counted among those who go down to the pit. I'm like a man without strength. I'm set apart with the dead, like the slain who lie in the grave. Now, I'm not saying that was dramatic for him. He went through some stuff that I've never experienced in my life. But it's on and on. You've put me in the lowest pit, in the darkest depths. Your wrath lies heavily upon me. Your wrath has swept over me. Your terrors have destroyed me. I mean, just seriously, do you say that kind of stuff to God? Maybe you should. The very next chapter, the last thing he says, you have taken all my companions and loved ones from me. The darkness is my closest friend. That is sad. Seriously, that's some process. But he was so close to God. He knew that God loved him, and he knew that God had his heart, and he knew that he had God's heart, and he wasn't afraid to get messy. He wasn't afraid to say crazy stuff like, this is how I feel. And it's messy. I am like those who go down to the grave. You've taken everything from me. I'm upset. And then, next chapter, I will sing of the Lord's great love forever. With my mouth, I will make your faithfulness known through all generations. I will declare that your love stands firm forever, that you established your faithfulness in heaven itself. You said, I have made a covenant with my chosen one. I have sworn to David, my servant, I will establish your line forever and make your throne firm through all generations. It took getting messy for him to remember what was true. He had to get all the stuff out so it wasn't in the way, because it was a filter, right? It was creating filters. I felt like some people needed, that's my husband. I felt like some people, I love him. I feel like some people needed permission to be in process. And some of us just flat need to humble ourselves. Because this big thing that God has for you, there's no way we're going to get there if we're not okay with mess. If you're not okay sometimes to be like, I feel like I'm in a pit and I'm upset and I don't know what you're doing. I'm not questioning that you're God, but I don't know what you're doing and I need to see something. I've got to hear from you. This is what we do. We talk. We're intimate. I need to hear from you. And then before you know it, because you were honest with you and you were honest with God and you were okay with being a mess, the next thing you'll find is that truth rises up. Truth comes out, and all of a sudden, I will sing. I will sing of your faithfulness. I'll sing a new song because you're willing. That new sweet song often comes out of the mess. It comes out of the process. The promise is in the process. It's not at the end. It's in the process. And if you'll embrace the process, the promise will embrace you. You'll find yourself wrapped in promise. So I'm going to say one more thing. Can I just do one more thing? And then we'll go. Some of you, I'm distracted by the lint on my pants. Some of you, some of you, this is what you get for wearing a fuzzy sweater when you preach. You have to be careful what you wear when you preach. It's so annoying. Anyways. Bang. Yeah. Some of you, and maybe some of you are great at process. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm alone. I'm okay with that. I'll be in the undoing. But some of you have gotten this word from God and you feel like you've been waiting for a long time. Like some of you are carrying a promise from God. How many of you feel like that? Okay, that's lots of us. And of course, all of us have some promises that have yet to be fulfilled because, we're not face to face yet. But in this season, while you wait and while you're going through process and while you're letting the Lord do all this stuff, that's what intimacy does. It takes vulnerability to be close. Transparency and intimacy, or transparency and vulnerability are two very different things. Transparency is often confused. Transparency is like an exchange of information. It's like, I'll tell you everything that's going on. There's nothing you don't know. But there's no heart connection. It's like, you know what I'm saying? You can tell when, those people who ask you, like, how are you? And they just want information. They're not asking, like, hey, how are you? How is your heart? What's going on in there? It's different. And you know what I'm talking about. That's all the Lord wants. He wants to connect with you. He wants real intimacy. He doesn't just want, he already knows your stuff, so transparency doesn't really do anything. Although it matters. I know you have to do that to be vulnerable. When Mary was chosen to carry the Christ child, that's a pretty big promise. Like the biggest ever. And she was just a baby girl. She was just a young baby girl who knew God. And she talked to God, and she was close to God, and he had her heart, and she had his. And so God picked her, and he sent an angel. He said, you're going to carry the Messiah. Now, if that were me, I would probably freak out. And I'd be thinking, what's the first thing you think? You'd probably be, on the floor a mess because it's, there's angels present. But then you're thinking, I haven't been with a man. I'm not married. I'm like, this is a disaster. Do you realize what you've done? You're ruining my life. Thank you. And I just, did you think, could you have picked a married person to carry this baby? I mean, there's all these things that might go through your head, right? But she says, let it be unto me as you have said. And I'm like, okay, right. Yeah, I hope that I would say that. But that's why I picked Mary and not me. Okay. But there's a reason why I chose Mary. And now Mary could have walked away from that encounter with the angel and looked around as, gone. Okay. We're here, breathing. Maybe that never happened. She could have easily walked away and gone, you know what? A mental lapse. Broke down today. It's been a stressful week. We're going to chalk it up to that. All right? Messiah. Okay. Woo. But what does it say she did? It says immediately she packed her things and went to see Elizabeth. Who was what? Pregnant with promise. Why? Because Elizabeth wasn't supposed to have a baby either. Elizabeth was too old. It was too everything, whatever, And she did. Right? That's just a weird thing. That's weird. Everybody's like, okay. Don't know how this happened. Whew. But Jesus, but God. And so Elizabeth is carrying this promise. Mary went and surrounded herself with testimony when she couldn't see her promise. She could have just walked away and then not, noticed for how many weeks or months, but she didn't. Immediately she went to Elizabeth and she surrounded herself with promise, and she celebrated what was already there. If you're carrying a promise and you haven't seen it and you feel like it's not showing, go find someone whose promise is already showing and celebrate with them. Celebrate their promise coming to pass. And you're going to feel that thing start to jump in you. You're going to feel that thing start to jump in you. Because everything you do now, you're eating for two, guys. Yes, gentlemen, you too. You're also preggers. There's so much going on in there. So I won't go into that because I could probably talk about this stuff forever. But we're all carrying something. We're all waiting to see God do something. But there's a price to be close. We have to be close in the process. We have to be willing to walk through the process. We have to be willing to get messy, because that's what close does. That's what it does when you're close. When you're in love, you're not afraid to get messy. You get close and you're like, here's everything. You can have it all. You called me. You must have known it was there. So here it is. It's all... give it all back anyways. And I'm going to trust you to grow this thing in me, because I don't know how to do it. And I want it to come out with all its arms and legs. I want this to be healthy. You forfeit the process. You forfeit your promise. That's what we do. Or it comes out sick or paralyzed. I'm going to stop. there's grace for the process all the way along the way. It's okay to be wrong. It's got to be. It's okay to work on stuff and to let people know. Not everybody. That's stupid. That's just stupid. Not everybody. You don't confide that in everyone. You don't just walk around confessing. So, guys, last night. No, you don't. But there are people you need accountability. And I'm not talking about people you exchange information with. I'm talking about the people you do life with. And then you get real honest before any of that with God and with yourself. And you call it what it is. And you sing it out. You repent, you turn, you sing it out. It's not always a problem. Sometimes it's just a process. I don't know if you want me to, I can share the dreams, whatever you feel. It doesn't matter. Dreams? Yeah. Sure. The dreams that I had, I'll make this quick. The dreams that I had this week before we started, I mentioned them last night. They were all about families. And every night was a different family. And I think they all represented something different. They were all families that I knew well, or that I'd known. Some I'd known for years and years, but some I just knew had struggled with specific things throughout the generational line. And it was a process. They were in the middle of mess and they loved God, but there was stuff going on. And some didn't know God. Half of the family saved, half of them not. But I felt like, it's like there was a lesson. There was something the Lord was doing in each family. Like in one family, there was just, every marriage in the family was under stress. Every single one of them. And it was like, sometimes it was like an issue of unfaithfulness, but most of the time it was just frustration. It was just frustrated about life and the stuff and the process. And it's like they couldn't get past it. They were so overwhelmed with the stuff that connection had been lost. Instead of coming closer and getting messy, because what you need is connection. It's not to separate. That's what you need, is to be close. And there was this tension, and at one of the marriages, like they were just, I don't know if it was stubbornness. It's like they had to be right. No, you just need to be close. You don't need to be right now. Maybe you are. Good grief. Get over it. You want to be right? You want to have a healthy marriage. You can say, I don't feel that way about it. I don't see it that way. But I'm willing to hear differently from the Lord and from you. I'm willing to hear differently. I'm willing to process this out with you and be close to you. I don't have to be right. This isn't about that. So I feel like that's one of the dreams. And another dream, it was about, there was addiction. There was addiction in the family. Just long things on down the line. People that love God, again, like people that love God. And it was just like this addiction, the secret stuff that there wasn't a safe place to share or process, so it was just like a secret. If we're not a safe place for people, why would we expect them to trust Jesus? If they can't come to church and talk about this stuff or share it with someone, what are we being? Who are we? What are we for? So in that dream, it was about the breaking of addiction. It was like getting it out and saying, hey, I need help. Like, I need this to break off of my life. I love God. I'm walking with God, but I need this thing to break. It has got to break. So that was, in the dreams, I was just watching each family. I was just like sitting in their living rooms, like watching everything happen. Another one, the kids were unsaved. It was like there was salvation needed in the home, and it was tearing things apart. It's like they were devastated that their kids were lost. Instead of being full of hope, they were just devastated, and it threw things off. And I just felt like And I had 2 dreams about family last night. This one in particular that I woke up to, there's one about our family. There's another one, I had this house full of people, and this was all my friends who are like family. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like you have your, we have like my best friends in my family, and we're all in this house. Steven and I have this giant house, and we have all these people over. And I went in, I thought everybody's going to be hungry soon. Everybody's going to be really hungry soon. So I go into the kitchen, and I go to like make something for everyone, and I realize that some of my friends they've taken my food. They've taken like all of the ingredients that I had left to make something with, and the only ingredients that were left were either bad, they needed to be thrown out, or there was like nothing left. And I'm like, what am I going to feed them? What am I going to feed everybody? And I realized, I felt like the Lord was saying 2 things. I felt like when I woke up, he said, well, it's time to live a life of miracles in the day-to-day. It's time, like, he wants to do miracles in families. If I multiply the loaves and the fish, then I can surely make you a meal for 30. But it was me being willing to say, like, okay, well, I don't have anything left. What can we do about this? The other thing was boundaries. Why are people in your home that are taking all your stuff? And I felt like the Lord was saying that there were some families, even here, who you've been taken advantage of. Some people, it's like you've let people into your homes, and well-meaning people. You've let people into your secret place, your safe haven, and without meaning to, they've taken or drained or stolen. And it was all well-meaning, but you had no boundaries, and you didn't know when to draw a line and say, okay, enough's enough. Here's where we draw a line. This is our family. There's wisdom in that. There's a lot of wisdom in that. You have to be able to come home. It can't just be like an open door policy all the time. Where's home then? Where's home for you? So I felt like the Lord really wanted to bring boundaries in certain homes, that God would give you wisdom to know when to shut your door and when to open it, and that he would give you wisdom to what you let in and what you give away. Does that make sense?